Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Abolitionists Live. We're so excited to be with you and have you with us here once again this afternoon. We are in a new location because we have a special guest with us. And so I'm Blair Pippin, your host, and here once again with our founder and CEO, Tomas Lars. I'm going to turn it over to Tomas to introduce our special guest today.
So good afternoon to our friends and partners and those who are still not sure about the abolitionist movement. We are so excited today because we have our very special guest here all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, and we have Jeanne Allert. She is the founder and CEO of Samaritan Women, a best practice program and safe house here in the United States. And she's also the founder and is leading the National Trafficking Shelter Alliance. And so many of you know that as we have been talking about United Abolitionists and how we need to come together and you know that God is calling us to unite, that I've known Jeanne now for several years, believe it or not.
We were just babes when we started.
Yes, yes. And to see the fruit, to see what God has done with Samaritan Women and the Alliance, and just your spirit, Jeanne, from day one, how collaborative you are, and you know everything that you are leading, and you've been, I know, a mentor to many. And so we would love for you today just to share, really to let our audience here, especially in Central Florida, know who you are and how you started Samaritan Women, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, thanks. Nice to sort of virtually meet all of you. So just a little bit about me and how I got involved in this work. I have kind of an interesting trajectory. I was leading a very successful, lucrative life as a consultant around the DC area, of which that and lawyers, there are plenty. And frankly, it was very worldly life. And there was an emptiness, though, on the inside, because after a while, how much more stuff can you buy? And that hole that was forming in my heart was soon filled when the Lord just sort of led me to have a meeting with somebody, to have an encounter with an individual who said, come out on my street outreach. I want you to see what my church is doing to reach out to these women. And I'm thinking, why do I want to do this? But I was searching. And so I went with him. And boy, what a divine appointment that was. Because that's when, like for many of us, when you encounter a problem and the problem finally has a name and a face, it changes. Right? And for me, it was Heather. And when I met Heather and I got into her story and understood that holy rage that just built up in me that said, this is not acceptable. You know, just irony, I was raised in Bangkok, Thailand. You would think that if God was calling me to abolition, that I would be somehow involved with the international issue, but in his infinite sense of humor, he chose Baltimore. And so Heather really was the catapult for me to put a face on it, to make it real. But from that, it just became a discontent that I live in this particular nation and we have this going on. And the more you begin to learn, the more you study this, the more you examine, frankly, I hope the angrier you become, but I hope it becomes an anger that is a righteous anger, an indignation that says, I have to do something, because that's what happened to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, Jeanne, that with, you know, recently we've been hearing a lot about the Me Too movement. Mm-hmm. You know, we've seen just a rise, right? Now with the child abuse scandals and what's going on in Pennsylvania, right next to you in Maryland.
Right.
Because
and within the church.
Yes.
And within the church.
God is highlighting something to us. You know, one thing I was talking to a friend this morning is that sometimes it takes something drastic, right, to wake us up. Where I think it's just our human nature. And so I know that as you are there in the epicenter of Maryland, Washington, D.C., I know according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, D.C. is one of the top areas, that whole metro area of reports on the hotline. And so what are you seeing there on the ground there? I'm a little curious at what's going on in our nation's capital.
Yeah, and let me just say one thing just to reinforce your message about being woken up, because I was having a conversation recently with the Commissioner for Faith-Based Initiatives under HHS. And her name is Shannon Royce, and she's a lovely woman of God. And she said, a poignant question I think we all need to grapple with. What is the church going to do with the opportunity we are being given? And if we look at this state of affairs as the church's opportunity.
Yes.
Just like Bonhoeffer had to look at his opportunity.
Yes. Opportune time.
When we look at it that way, I think it's a game changer.
Yes.
And we mobilize with greater confidence. And so I just want to share that with you because that really stuck with me. I think certainly there is opportunity in the DC area, but I want to also sort of deflect from that and say I think what's important is for us to understand, those of us who understand this issue of domestic sex trafficking, understand that it is so disrespectful of geography. It doesn't stay in Central Florida, right? It goes to North Carolina, it goes to Texas. It's very much movement. And it's a crime that frankly plays those loopholes of if Virginia doesn't have very strident laws, it might move more aggressively into that area.
Yeah.
DC has a problem because statehood, it doesn't have the same recognition, right?
Okay.
Mayors are changing. There's so much transience. There's a lot of people who go unseen in DC. Everybody wants to be seen,
Sure.
but a lot of people go unseen. And so what a ripe opportunity for that. I mean, you have that in your neighborhoods where there are just people hidden in plain sight.
I love what you're saying, Jeanne, too, because let's look at this. We see things on TV every night, whether it's a sexual assault scandal, child abuse, domestic violence. But let's not look at the negative. I think in our human fallen nature, we want there's a gossip mill right now, right?
Yeah.
The media and social media is feeding on all this gossip. No, as believers saying, I love that. God, there's an opportune time. The Bible calls it a kairos moment. Mm-hmm. And so I believe we have that right now because as people think trafficking is not occurring in our own backyard, right? It's just occurring, a lot of folks tell me in Thailand, right? Yeah. Or in India. Yeah. No, it's occurring
in Indiana.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, if you'll elaborate on what Samaritan Women is doing and, what you're seeing also on the ground there, because I believe we do have an opportunity right now to really get the awareness out, right, to our community, to our congregations, and let's just capture this moment.
Yeah, and I want to underscore why that's so incredibly important because you'll hear from abolitionists all the time, awareness, and you think, oh my gosh, how much awareness can I possibly have? There isn't really a limit to it. Here's where I want you to know that it is incredibly efficacious. One of the heartbeats of our organization and in launching this alliance is we want to be able to put forward better research, more credible numbers. We want to be able to speak not only with heart but with head. And so there's a lot of energy and a lot of effort being put into creating formality, structures, standards, protocols, research, that kind of thing. We did a study back in the beginning of 2017 based on 2016 data, and we asked shelter programs across the United States a variety of questions, a lot of questions, but one of them was, where are your referrals coming from? Not by virtue of geography alone, but what type of agencies? Because I think by default we just assume, the SWAT guy shows up and drops off a girl and that's what it always looks like. What was so fascinating to come out of that study was that we learned that the number one and number two responses of where the majority of referrals are coming from are families or self-referral. So it's coming from people who are relationally connected to survivors, and then from agency to agency. So Out of Darkness in Atlanta calls Jeanne in Baltimore. And Jeanne in Baltimore can't take her, so I call Carolyn in Alabama. And that's how we are finding proper placement. But I believe that the reason that that's working is because the awareness is now out there that people are making those relational connections, that a mom can even pick up the phone and say, my daughter needs help. I attribute that to good awareness. Yeah. And so I think we have to understand that that's not just an interesting Saturday morning at the church to go listen to a seminar. You then are going to be confronted with a situation where you're going to see something and you're going to need to say something.
That's great. Yes.
Jeanne, that makes me think that we have a lot of viewers that want to get involved, and you went from a very lucrative business career, you took the jump,
sold it all,
and started a safe home. Now, not everyone's called to do that, but we all can do something. Absolutely. And so could you talk to our audience about some practical things that they can do right now, today, tomorrow, this week, this month, to help stop human trafficking?
Well, I'm going to give it a two-pronged answer. One, things that you can do immediately would be to find what are the agencies, task forces, coalitions, what is going on in your immediate area, and that's a Google search, so it's pretty easy. Find out who's out there, and then go ask them, what do you need? What do you need? Because you might be surprised. I mean, if you contact a place like ours, people think, oh, do I need to drop off clothing? Do I need to drop off toiletries? No. Our women take showers and they're not naked. So I don't need any of that. But you know what I do need? I need bus passes. I need Amazon gift cards because they're all in college. And they got to buy textbooks. And that's so exciting to be a part of that rebuilding. So we got to ask, what do you need? But you also said to stop it. And I think depending upon how much of an appetite you have for systems and understanding how far upstream in this system do we need to go to stop it? We need to go to your 9-year-old daughter. And the best thing that you can do is invest in her. The best. And that's not just a Hallmark card. Because when she then is 13, 14 years old, I'm not trying to scare you, but when she's that age and there's all those social influences on there, and some half-baked character comes up and says, you can call me daddy, she can confidently look him in the face and go, my daddy's better than your daddy. And that's resistance, right? That's building up a resistance. And so, frankly, if I could blink and have a wish, it would be that the entire church would take full ownership of the foster care system, of child welfare, that we would step in and say, there is no child in this country that should be left unfed, unclothed, unhoused, unloved.
Mm-hmm. Widows and orphans, right? That's true religion.
There you go.
True religion.
It's in the book.
Yes, yes. Blair, I know there are any other questions that we may want to ask Jeanne while we have this treasure here.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about maybe touching on what you've seen has been helpful for the survivors that you're helping.
Yeah, it isn't the things that I think we stereotypically want to do, like I say, the certain kinds of donations. And I also think that we put way too much emphasis, I'm going to say this carefully, we put too much immediate emphasis on trauma counseling. Stabilization is the first order of business. She has been in a chaotic, unstable, unreliable, non-relational context. We see on average 4 years before she's come to us. Many, many years before that because of what rendered her vulnerable to begin with. So relational stability is so paramount to her healing. There's a beautiful psychologist, Dr. Bruce Perry, who does a lot with child abuse. And he says trauma can only be healed in relationship. So if we're talking about engaging, if you're somebody who is like, boy, I'd like to volunteer or something, please do that out of the spirit of, I'm going to be consistent. Because she doesn't need one more person who's going to come blow through her life,
Wow.
and just want to take an experience.
So Jeanne, this moves me because the staff knows I was just with a male survivor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been someone who's been on a journey and he's getting stabilized.
Yeah.
And I had actually texted Blair and I said, we have to be consistent. We have to. I know some people, because a lot of them have been in the systems in foster care and this system and that, or in the detention or jail, and sometimes in those systems they feel like a number.
Yeah.
And they go from one role model to another. People. There's a huge turnover in a lot of those social service fields. Right. And that was the spirit this morning was, no, we have to be consistent. He's stabilizing. Now, and in that context, then, I love what you're saying, then the healing can really occur.
Right. Because I think we jump in too soon with our smarts.
Yeah.
Like, here's what you need prescriptively. And maybe what somebody really needs for a while is just some peace in their spirit, right? They have to, you take the brain science people and they talk about neural pathways and how you have to rewire the brain. All right, that's not going to be done once. That means with my consistency with you, if every time I say I'm going to be here on Tuesday, I'm here on Tuesday, that begins to change you chemically. It changes you relationally, and it also changes you spiritually because you begin to believe in things that have permanence when you didn't before.
Yes.
And so I think we can't underestimate the value of our presence, our physical presence, and the consistency thereof.
Yeah. Wow.
Beautiful. Wow.
That's wonderful. Yeah, Jeanne, thank you so much.
We could spend hours.
We could. We could talk for
Yeah,
a
we
long
could.
time with
We could.
you, and we're glad that you're going to share with some of the other people in the movement here in Orlando this afternoon. But thank you so much for taking
pleasure.
time to share with us. We do want to mention, if you're interested in getting involved, we have our Abolitionist training this coming Saturday, the 25th. You can still sign up. It's not too late to do that, but we will be shutting down registration on Wednesday, so go ahead and sign up for that right away. And that's the best way to just learn a lot more about the issue and learn how you can get involved, and you can ask us what we need, and maybe we'll be able to plug you in to some of those ways.
Go to stophumantrafficking.com and you can register. It's on our homepage there on the slider, and we would love to have you. We do a combo of training. What is abolitionist, and what are the faces and the mask of trafficking look like, and also at the end, how do you get involved? We take the last hour because we believe that God has called everyone to have a part of this abolition movement. It doesn't matter if you are a stay-home mom, or if you're a college student, or if you are a social worker, getting your master's and you're ready to just get in the field. There's something for everyone to do, and we will help you engage in that. And so please join us this Saturday.
We'll look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again, Jeanne.
Thank you, Jeanne.
Take care.